This is all theater. This is all just political theater.
Political theater. Political theater.
Pure political
theater.
Theater.
Political theater.
The
nefarious,
significant and protracted
political
theater for political theater's sake.
I yield back.
From Washington, this is Political Theater, Roll Call's review of the spectacle of politics on Capitol Hill and across the country. I'm Jason Dick. Welcome back to Political Theater. We're going to talk about the elections this week in Wisconsin and Florida. They were the first big tests of where politics are right now. And you may notice, for those of you who are watching on YouTube, that we're in a slightly different locale here at the Roll Call Newsroom at 1201 Pennsylvania Avenue. This just seemed like a better spot than the normal glass cage of emotion with all the headlines and so forth, because that thing can get stuffy with one person, not let alone two, but three. We just have a little different space, so occasionally we'll be in here. So welcome to the whatever this is, to Marilyn McIntire, our campaigns and elections staff writer, who was just on a couple of weeks ago. Welcome back, Mel.
Hello, Jason.
And Andrew Menezes, our campaign and politics editor, who is making his first show on Political Theater. Welcome, Andrew.
Thank you, Jason.
Let's talk about Florida first. There were two special elections in Florida. These were to replace two House Republicans who had left. Matt Gaetz, who had resigned last year. He was Donald Trump's first pick to be Attorney General, resigned his seat from the House. He subsequently won that seat anyway, but then never took his seat. And then he bowed out of being Attorney General, the nominee. So the first district in Florida was a special election to replace him. And then the 6th district, we saw a contest to replace Michael Waltz, who had resigned in January to become Donald Trump's national security advisor and chief of operational security for things. You may have noticed Mr. Waltz's name in the headlines for things like Signalgate and now the use of Gmail for national security communications. But however Mr. Waltz is being defined right now, his seat needed to be filled, as did Gates' seat. And then in Wisconsin, there was a Supreme Court election. We'll talk about that after we talk about Florida. But let's start with Florida. Let's start first with the first district, which is again it was a little strange because the 6th district seat voting closed at 7:00 Eastern. But then the first district is in the Central Time Zone, so it closed an hour later. Andrew, let's talk a little bit about the first district and the two candidates there, and how things. Just the sort of the bio of the two, and then we can get into the election results with Mel.
Yeah. So the Republican candidate in the first district was Jimmy Patronis. He's twice been elected statewide as the chief financial officer of Florida. And so he had name ID. He lives just outside the district. In fact, both candidates in the special elections lived outside their districts. But it is a fairly Republican district. I don't think they've had a Democrat representing them in 30 years. And Trump carried it by 37 points in November. This was not expected to be closer,
and the Democrat
the Democrat. Sorry, yes, the Democratic nominee is Gabe Alamont.
Uh-huh.
She was the nominee last year as well, and she's an anti-gun violence activist. And Matt Gaetz won a 5th term last fall very comfortably before he resigned, and so we weren't really expecting this to be close at all. In the end, what was a seat that Trump won by 37 points turned out to be a 15-point victory for Patronis, a very serious, reduction in the GOP margins there. Potentially that's an indication of something broader, but, this was a district including, I have to point out, Escambia County, which is the sort of westernmost county in the Florida Panhandle, backed Valamond, the Democrat. And, Republicans on the presidential level have not won that county since 1960 with John F. Kennedy. So, a win is a win, and Jimmy Patronis is heading to Congress. But, the underperformance, I think, certainly has gotten people talking today, the day after the election.
All right. Let's talk about the 6th district now. Mel, this is for Waltz's seat. Mm-hmm. This made Republicans a little more nervous and Democrats a little more optimistic than the Gaetz seat, that they saw, especially the the Democrat raise a lot of money. But let's talk about the candidates first and then the results.
Yeah, Josh Wheel, excuse me. He's a teacher. He really was, raising, I think,
This is the Democrat.
The Democrat, yes, raised somewhere around $10 million, which is a lot of money for a House race generally, let alone for a special election in a safe Republican seat. He was running against Randy Fine, who was a state senator in Florida. This is Florida Governor Ron DeSantis's a version of the seat he held when he was in Congress.
Daytona Beach.
Yes, that area. And, I think that for the last couple of months, certainly you saw some headlines about how much money Wheel was raising. But again, this was a seat that Waltz won by over 30 points in November. So nobody was really thinking too much about it. And
Trump won it by a similar margin, too.
Somewhere around 30 points. I don't know the exact numbers. But yes, a very safe, among the safest Republican seats.
We've got it right behind you, 2024 election results. You can point to it right there.
Yeah, right around there. Very red, as everyone can see, if you look really closely. Yeah, so this is about as safe a Republican seat as you can get. And in the last week, we did start to see a little hand-wringing from Republicans. Mm-hmm. Privately, Republicans didn't really think that they were ever going to really lose this seat. Democrats never really thought they were going to win this seat. But you did see Richard Hudson, the chairman of the National Republican Congressional Committee. I always am glad when I get that out in the correct way.
And then second reference, you can just say NRCC, right? Writing a story.
Exactly. He sort of publicly chided Fine for, maybe not taking his fundraising as seriously as he should have, not getting up on air early enough. Ron DeSantis, basically said he was expecting a pretty big underperformance from Randy Fine. They have some tension between them, you might say. Randy Fine was one of the early endorsers of Donald Trump for the 2024 presidential election when DeSantis was among the Republicans trying to primary him.
Oh, that's right. He ran for president.
He ran for president as well, yes.
I forget that sometimes.
2 years ago? I can't even remember.
Time has no meaning.
Truly. So anyway, he was pretty, it seemed, fine to publicly chide.
Fine, if you will.
Fine.
Oh, I see what you did there. Yeah.
But yeah, ultimately, like Andrew said, Randy Fine is coming to Congress. Mm-hmm. Republicans crucially have these two seats filled as they're trying to, embark on enacting President Trump's legislative agenda. We've seen how narrow some of these votes are in the House in the last couple of months. So having these two seats filled, having two more reliably Republican votes is a very big deal for Mike Johnson and House Republican leadership. But you do have Democrats in Florida and other parts of the country feeling really good about cutting in half the Republicans' margin here. And does that translate nationally in every district next November, a year and a half from now? We don't really know what the political status is going to be. No, we don't know. We can't, you have some Democrats sort of saying any R+15 seat is now in play. Might be a bit of a stretch, but might not. I think a lot of Democrats are looking back to 2017. Karen Handel won a special election to replace Tom Price, who had become the HHS secretary. And John Ossoff, now a Georgia senator, he was a Democrat and he raised a ton of money for that race, really put it on the map.
Made it the most expensive House race to that point, right? I think
something like or a special, but tons of money. This was a really high profile race. Similarly, in a red seat, Price had held that district for a long time. And it was sort of a precursor of what was to come in the 2018 midterm. Right. So I think Democrats are, definitely feeling good, while they didn't do the almost unthinkable and actually win these seats, it's somewhat of a moral victory.
Right. To cut the margins in half for the president's, performance there and in the previous House members, mm-hmm. Both of whom were, popular, right. Among their constituents. Again, it's still the Democrats still lost. We should point that out. But and they didn't, these were reaches by any consideration. But the margin now, Republicans do have 220 seats again. Mm-hmm. It would not have mattered in a vote that was in the House yesterday, where they had to pull a rule vote over proxy voting, and kind of basically scuttled their entire agenda because they had 9 Republicans vote against the rule. But they're at 220, 213 now. And then there's two more Democratic seats that are empty because of the deaths of Sylvester Turner in Texas and Raul Grijalva in Arizona. But those, again, are sort of overwhelmingly Democratic seats. So we may be back by the end of the year to 220, 215, which is where we were at the beginning.
Right.
So,
right.
But I do want to note before we talk about Wisconsin, though, that the Elise Stefanik, who is a former member of House leadership in the Republicans. She's been a House member from upstate New York, Albany area for quite a while. She was nominated by Donald Trump to be his UN ambassador. Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, wasn't super happy about it given the margins. And last week they pulled the nomination, and Trump asked her to stay in the House because they were concerned enough about losing possibly that seat and the margins, because they'd seen what happened in a Pennsylvania state legislative thing. So it's
he had won by like 24 points. So again, not a seat that in November anyone would have thought would be difficult to hold in a special election 6 months down the road.
Right. And in fact, Nathan Gonzalez, our elections analyst, pointed out in his column today that if Gay Valamont's overperformance in Florida won, if you had replicated that in Stefanik's seat, the Democrat could have won that election.
Right.
I mean, the margin, the difference being given that that's a less Republican seat than Florida won. Right. So, just a sign of how they were worried potentially about losing that.
I mean, overall, you'd still probably want to be the Republicans, here. Special elections are weird animals, and Democrats have overperformed in special elections in the last, really the Trump era for the most part. That isn't always the case.
Dems have had a really, really rough few months up until they
go with
Monday.
Yeah.
So I think that this is certainly very welcome for them and a big deal. But yeah, it's I don't know. The New York seat, there were some weird things going on as Republicans tried to figure out who their nominee was going to be in the special election as well. The potential for, if one conservative wasn't picked, would he run as a third party candidate, which also would have given Democrats a leg up potentially in that race. But this is, if Democrats can sort of take all of this and move forward as sort of a reset after the last couple months, that it would be very welcome amongst them all. But we'll see if they are able to do that.
It certainly would help with their fundraising. So, if nothing else. Speaking of money and fundraising, there was a Wisconsin, the other sort of marquee race was not even a congressional race, federal race, which is what we typically spend a lot of our time, if not most of it, covering. But there's a Wisconsin Supreme Court election. Yes, Supreme Court judges are elected in Wisconsin last night also, which became another litmus test of where we are in politics. It became the most expensive judicial race, I think, in history, state judicial race in history. $100 million spent on this race, which is insane. That's that's a marquee Senate race, in California. And I know that you have to advertise in the Chicago market and so in the Minneapolis market and so forth, but it's not the previous record of there was a 2023 race where it was $56 million.
Shattered in that record, which at the time felt like so much money on a judicial race just 2 years ago.
Right. And this is for control. This is of the Supreme Court, and it's whether it be 4-3 conservatives, or 4-3 liberals, Democrats, Republicans, whatever. However we're calling it. I think a lot of these, the liberal conservative kind of thing, it bothers me a little bit, but I don't know what else to call them.
The Republican-backed and the Democratic-backed candidates.
Right. But beyond it was also a stretch to say that this would have a direct effect on congressional elections. They may, if somebody challenges the congressional maps, the redistricting. Wisconsin is a perennial swing state, but of its 8 members of Congress, 6 are Republicans. So the Democrats are kind of packed along the maps into, Madison, basically, and Milwaukee. Of the two senators, one's a very liberal Democrat, Tammy Baldwin, and a very conservative Republican, Ron Johnson. So it's just a weird state, So, but the main thing too is that Elon Musk, the head of the Doge service, depending on who you ask, I guess, and one of Donald Trump's biggest backers in the last election, and now also the owner of Tesla and SpaceX, he put $20 million into this race, including handing out two $1 million checks for people who went and said that they were excited about voting or didn't like activist judges or so. They did some sort of thing to make it seem somewhat legal, I guess, to hand out $1 million checks to people who were voting, or maybe I think it was a picture of them with the thumbs up with the Republican judge or whatever. It was some odd, sort of consideration. But Musk went there. He was there on Sunday in Green Bay. He was, spending a lot of time and cash and political capital, if you will. And how did it turn out?
Musk really went all out on this race. He, like you said, he was there up until the very end. He was posting about this race. He was really urging people to vote. And he was really saying, if the liberal candidate,
I guess we should name them too.
Yeah.
Right? Let me make sure.
Crawford.
Susan Crawford is the liberal/Democrat.
Yes, and she won by about a 10-point margin, which I have to say was a much larger margin than I was expecting for this race. She was facing Brad Schimmel, the conservative candidate in the race. He's a former Republican state attorney general, so he had previously won statewide back in 2014.
And they were both judges.
Yeah.
Like she in Dane County, which is Madison, and he in Waukesha, which is outside Milwaukee.
Yes. So sort of similar.
I like saying that. Waukesha.
Somewhat similar background. She had previously worked in a Democratic governor's administration. So, they both had some partisan tilt, but currently both hold circuit county judgeships.
And I think Schimmel was also appointed to his current position after he lost his attorney general race by Scott Walker, Wisconsin Ranger. Yeah.
Yes.
Who had also just lost his race.
Right.
So this was an appointment before he left office.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
But
so 10 points. That's
10 points.
Yeah.
It was larger than I expected. 2 years ago, there was a very high profile Supreme Court race in which the liberal wing kind of won control for the first time in over a decade. And it was a much larger margin. This was sort of coming after the fall of Roe v. Wade, and abortion was a really motivating issue in that race, as it was in this race, but not quite as much as I would say 2 years ago. The conservative candidate in this race was, I would say, a stronger candidate than the one who ran 2 years ago as well. But 10 points, pretty notable. And it's really a rejection of Elon Musk, because not only did he put a lot of money into ads, he was physically there. He was very much sort of like the face of this race. In part,
He even
Democrats.
put a cheese head on.
That picture has been going around for the last few days. I expect we will see more of it going forward.
The only thing this race was missing was Aaron Rodgers.
Does he go to Wisconsin anymore, though?
I don't think
I heard
so.
he's going to Pittsburgh now.
I don't think there's anywhere left for him to go. But he's just that would have completed.
Yeah.
Or Brett Favre, who's been on. As long as we're talking about Green Bay.
He's in Congress every once in a while.
Yeah.
He's had to testify.
Right.
He did endorse the Republican, I believe, in that.
Oh.
Favre or Rodgers? Brett Favre.
Okay.
There you go.
Notable.
Yeah. Now that I'm not dating.
Fact check me on this afterwards, but be sure I read that.
Yeah.
So, again, it is early. It's April. We're recording this on April 2nd. But we're going to have a dribs and drabs of different special elections.
Yeah.
Later on this summer, we'll get some movement on the Arizona seat. We don't know about the Texas seat, the Turner seat yet, right? Yeah.
Greg Abbott still hasn't the governor's prerogative to call for a special election. But, if he were to and wasn't going to do it through an emergency order, I think it would probably be in November. Yeah. So it's going to be open for a while.
Getting back to just some of the Republican reaction, Richard Hudson, NRCC chair, he's a pretty smart guy. He knows that, a win is a win, but if he's going to see a trend in underperformance like this, then he's got to be worried, because the Republicans really don't have that much of a margin of error. What's been the reaction like today? I haven't seen a lot. It is Liberation Day, where we find out that my favorite vermouth is going to be, tariffed like crazy. But but like I haven't seen a ton of like yay kind of stuff from Republicans. I've seen a lot of reactions from Democrats who, again, on the Florida races, they didn't win. But the Republican stuff has been a little muted. Granted, they're not in D.C. right now.
I was going to say, Republican House members, for better or worse, have sort of been saved from having to, face questions about these results from reporters on Capitol Hill today because of the aforementioned proxy voting vote yesterday. Votes were canceled for the rest of the week. Last night, the NRCC put out a statement essentially congratulating Democrats for putting money on fire. Yeah. And, they sort of said, we won. Here's this tick. But they didn't necessarily acknowledge the gap shrinking. So we'll see how Republicans respond to this. So far, Republicans have very much said, we have this mandate. But I do think that you're seeing some of the political realities as they're working on the budget resolution to try to move towards reconciliation, particularly on Medicaid. You're seeing a lot of notable Republicans sort of saying we're not going there. Like Josh Hawley comes to mind as one who's been pretty outspoken on not really wanting these big Medicaid cuts that are being talked about. And that to me is a direct reflection of looking back at the 2018 cycle and looking at what trying to roll back the Affordable Care Act did for Republicans in terms of energizing Democrats in the midterm. So we'll see sort of how things shift, but there hasn't been a ton of public, these districts that we won by 30 points, we only won by 15, but at the end of the day, they still won. They're feeling good about that. Democrats, for their part, are publicly inviting Elon Musk to essentially every congressional district.
I think that was House Majority PAC sent out a tongue-in-cheek release saying
specifically inviting.
Yeah, please vote, please come and endorse and stump for all House Republicans. Please.
I was just on a press call with the DNC chair Ken Martin and the Wisconsin chair and the Florida chair, and they were very similarly, saying that they hope Elon Musk really remains a regular presence for Republicans on the campaign trail. So we'll see. I mean, Republicans publicly have been pretty supportive of Musk. There's been some apprehension around Doge for sure, but very few who have sort of been willing to go out and publicly be negative about him since November. He clearly has the ear of the president. They seem to still have a strong relationship, even with reporting today that, maybe he's going to take a step back from his special position with the federal government in the weeks to come. So we'll see if there's a change of that. I'm not necessarily sure that this is going to suggest to any of our battleground House Republicans that they want to bring Musk to their district. But again, he does have lower favorabilities than President Trump at this point. And so I don't necessarily expect Republicans to start running away from Trump in that way.
Right. I wouldn't expect that the reaction in, say, Mike Lawler's district to Elon Musk will be the same as it would be at like CPAC, for instance.
No, probably not. Not quite. But we'll see. I mean, this is one of the biggest questions facing Republicans for the midterms is how do you turn out Trump voters who carried some of your incumbent over the line last November? How do you turn them out? Right. So far, this has not suggested that they have a great answer to that based on last night's results.
Yeah. All right. Well, got a couple things left before we wrap up, including our word of the week. And part of it was hinted at just by my quip about my vermouth probably getting more expensive, which is tariff. Donald Trump is announcing tariffs on everything, on lint, on cars, everything that's not nailed down. And there has been this discussion about whether a tariff is a tax or not. So for today's this podcast word of the week, I've put away the congressional dictionary and just gone to the Webster's Collegiate Dictionary for their definition of tariff. And here it is. Tariff. 1. A list or system of taxes placed by a government upon exports or especially imports. 2. A tax of this kind, or bill, charge, fare, etc. There you have it. Tariff, the word of the week from Webster. from Webster's Collegiate Dictionary. I didn't even know we had one of these around the newsroom. Thank God for my book hoarding skills. And then before we go, I just thought that I wanted to ask each of you about things that are coming up in the coming weeks. Andrew, you're going to go to your first White House Correspondents' Dinner. It may be a tense one. The Correspondents Association just said no thank you to the comedian that they had scheduled, Amber Ruffin. We're getting indications that people at the White House and the White House staff will not be attending. So it has a potential to be a not typical one. But these things are kind of a big deal. What are you looking forward to? And have you gotten your tux yet?
And I have not got my tux yet. I don't know. I think I'm just looking forward to the experience. I've obviously watched it on TV, and I've heard stories from you and other people in the newsroom. So just looking forward to meeting other people and just seeing what it's all about.
Yeah, sometimes it's a very long evening. I don't weep for not having a comedian be the lead speaker, because partially I don't mind them. I mean, like, I've been to a few of these, and some of them have done quite well and had a nice presentation. Craig Ferguson comes to mind, several years back. But the best speaker who I have heard attending this dinner was Ron Chernow, the historian. The historian's not always known for their quick wits necessarily in front of 5,000 people at dinner, but Chernow was quite good. He was funny. He was witty, and at that point, we were several years past the time when Hamilton, his biography of Hamilton became the basis for the musical was in the bloodstream. But he did a great job. So I don't know whether they will have anybody be a keynote. Who knows? So we'll find out. Yeah. And then Mel, you are running the Cherry Blossom race on Sunday.
I don't know if after
and Miles
monsoon we had on Monday, there are any cherry blossoms left for this run, but I'll be running nonetheless.
Yeah, and so, but you've run the Cherry Blossom before.
I have, yes. Yeah. This will be my 4th time, so We'll see how it goes comparatively. We're feeling okay.
Yeah,
I think I can finish.
I've run the 5K.
Yeah.
My wife Fawn Johnson has run it. I think this will be her 8th time.
Okay.
When you do it your 10th time, you just get in like automatically.
Oh, good to know.
So if you keep doing it, you can get on the thing. But the training's going well. Like
it's going.
It's going. Okay.
It's done now. I mean, we've done the long run, so a couple of shakeout runs before Sunday, and hopefully next time I'm on, I can tell you that I finished with a not too embarrassing time. And if it is embarrassing, then we don't have to talk about it.
Yeah, we will. I mean, and again, what we're going for too is like the Olympics, right? I mean, it's still within reach.
Yes,
right?
I am obviously in contention for LA 28's cross country team.
Yeah. That's what I thought. I also have been training. It's a stretch to call what I do running. I've heard a friend of the show, Jay Ruppert, who works at the House Periodical Gallery, call it what I do. Other people, what I do, wogging, like walking, jogging. He was referring to somebody who I won't name, but I've always used that term of yours. Citing you, of course, all the time. But yeah, I'm not a particularly speedy person, but I am training for my first 9K in not this coming weekend, but for the following weekend, the Delaware Coastal Running Festival. They have a marathon, half marathon, 9K, and then the day before they have a 5K. Last year I won the 5K. Fawn ran the half marathon. She's going to run the half marathon again. But this is the first time I've run a race this long since 2013. I ran the Marine Corps 10K in 2013, and it's been interesting getting into shape. Like, I did my long run last Sunday, and we ran from our home on Capitol Hill to the Tidal Basin.
Bold move this past weekend.
Well, I was thinking that I wouldn't want to be near it in a car, so that was a chance to go see it. And it was perfect. It was peak bloom, and also there's a beer garden. So it's a perfect recovery beer time. So, well,
the good news is after these long runs, we will be really good to go for the roll call 5K next month.
Yes, there is a roll call on 5K.
Well, the roll call team is participating, but
that's right. Oh no!
5K.
This is and it's actually a 3-miler. So the ACLI, American Council of Life Insurers, sort of Capitol Classic. This is in Anacostia Park in May 14th. I'm also signed up for it. Thank you for reminding me.
So we'll be very good to go for the ACLI 3 mile, as I have now learned it's called.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's not per se a 5K. They cap it at 3 miles, but it's nice. It's a flat out and back. It's really nice. Because it's right on the river.
Yep.
It's very funny. We have like all kinds of ridiculous names. Members of Congress run, Supreme Court justices run, like members of the media, the government, so forth. We have our fast team is News Travels Fast for CQ Roll Call. Last year, we didn't use this. We don't have as many teams, but last year, I was particularly proud of the team name that I came up with that we're on, which was the Select Committee for the Weaponization of Feet. I think that we have that the team I'm on, which is the slow team, is the motion to vacate the starting gun. So a little bit of procedural nerdiness, even in our name. There's always a contest for best team name and worst team name. And I think I can't remember if it was last year or the year before, the Peace Corps won for worst name. They were We've Got the Runs.
Ooh.
Yeah. Just a little bit of true nerd,
just some good old DC humor.
Andrew, again, I hope this was a good experience for you for the podcast. I mean, we did try something very new. We've never done it in this, but so I hope it was good.
I think so.
Yeah.
I guess we'll see the result.
Yes, the Nielsen ratings. We should go through them. We'll break YouTube and its algorithm. And Mel, thank you again as always.
Great to be back.
Yeah, and thank you to our listeners out there. And we'll see you next time in our next episode of Political Theater.